My one-time boss, my former editor in Daily Times, Samamuka, who is the owner of Vanguard, again, he took me on, and I was busy writing a column on aviation for his newspaper. And that was why I was enjoying. But for certain circumstances which I will describe, in my house in Lagos, I lived at a place called Alakoko in a very crowded rural community, so to say, within Lagos. And so my house was tucked in between other members of the community. There's an old man who built a house who was my neighbor. By midnight, at about 12, when I was used to sitting down behind my laptop to write my next column, this man would put a large loudspeaker and say, Hallelujah. Midnight service, so to say, regularly. The noise was so deafening. So in the morning, I woke up and me about Baba. This noise, I would say, it's God's work, and I should manage it. I noticed that I could not fight the old man. In fact, he would even order me to kneel down for prayer. Against my wish, I would while praying, he would say, hey, Shami. You can imagine what it meant. So now, one day I told my wife, look, I cannot win this fight with this old man. That has been his idea. Let us try and go to our country home, that is Akenle here, where I had a country home, which I had built for some years with my colleagues in those days used to come. We had as a practice every 1st January of every year. My friends from Lagos, from all part of Nigeria, they jollificated with me on January 1 here. So it has become a tradition for us. Okay. So I said, let's go to our village and let me see whether I could have some respite. And we came. At about 8 p.m. on one night, the whole village had slept. And we were alone in the house. And no single drop of pain on me. And then I blew and said, look, Femi, what
an uncommon personality with diverse gifts, the late Kabiyesi Oba Dr. OLUFEMI OGUNLEYE was not just a public relations practitioner par excellence. He was a painstaking journalist, a proficient chartered mediator in alternative dispute resolution, and a traditional ruler of high integrity. His unimaginable quest for education speaks glowingly of his hunger and thirst for the golden fleece. Up till his passage, as he never stopped learning until he bagged his doctorate degree in law. Thomas Campbell, a Scottish poet, says, to die is to live in the health of those we leave behind is not to die. That forms the kernel of the belief that the person of Oba Ogunleye lives on.
Kabiyesi Aláyélúwà Oba Olúfẹ́mi Ìyàndá Ògúnléyè was a fantastic man in many respects. I remember he played a very critical role in me emerging as Olowo. And how was that? Somehow it got hold of my profile from somebody. And when he saw the profile, he said, oh, we must ensure that we publicize this person. So he was, either consciously, unconsciously, practicing his PR profession by saying, we see somebody who is of this quality, we must also put him out there. And he took it out there and he spoke with different people and said, look, how about this person? We must encourage him to be part of those that will compete for the role. Eventually, I got to connect with him, and we connected. Now, in terms of journalism, I don't need to be saying anything about. I mean, his name is out there. One of the foremost reporters we've had in Nigeria, and one of the foremost public relations professional we have in Nigeria. One of the foremost mediators we have in Nigeria, and a very, very well-respected monarch, not only within the Owo Kingdom, but in Ogun State as a whole. The interesting thing about him is that when you look at his life, you can see different dimensions. It was an inspiration to a lot of us. Because for somebody who can go back to school to go and learn law, to go and study law in his 70s, he did not just get a degree in law, he went on to the law school and stayed with those who are even younger than his children in law school. It tells you how humble he is, how unassuming such a person is. And based on encouragement by his professors, he went on to do a master's degree and then a PhD degree in law. And, he was well respected even within the law, because he then became, he brought in the ADR, the Alternative Dispute Resolution expertise, which he was practicing as a monarch, into law. And that made it all the easier for him. He was a wonderful man. He was an inspiration. He was a role model to a lot of people. Somebody that will miss very, very badly. We just pray that he rests in the bosom of the Lord. Well, we have a Yoruba that says, "Iru alone you see, iru your poor," but which means that it's only God that you cannot compare with any other being. But for human beings, there are people in different dimensions. But Towulade Akinyele, the late Alayiloa OLUFEMI OGUNLEYE, was a man in a million. No doubt we'll miss him. In fact, we're already missing him because he left a very big gap. A very big gap. There are other people who are special here in the Owo Kingdom and in Ogun State, but he was just special in a special way. He was somebody who would work as if he would take off the pips, from his shoulders. You would think he was just an ordinary person. That was how humble he was. And whatever you give him to do in service to his people, he would do it as if his life depended on it. That was the kind of person the late Towulade was. We certainly will miss him.
Obviously, that is an unrepairable loss to me, to the town, to the country entirely.
Okay, why?
Because it's somebody you can see any time. There is no room for nonsense from his gate. He open gate 24/7 hours. And whenever you come here for any help, he will surely do it 100%. As far as I know Kabiyesi about 25 years ago, somebody never to be forgotten. Ọmọ dáadáa ni, ó ṣe yọ̀ dáadáa, ó máa súre.
Oba Ogunleye, when you talk about legacy, he represents for me the legacy of integrity. I first met him when he was in the Nigeria Airways. So he was a friend of my, Egbons in journalism, and what he does is he was a very candid person. He tells you the truth and advises you. And then when you look at him and people who were with him, you will see that when journalists were collecting yellow envelope and doing those, he doesn't do that. You understand? And then people like us will learn from him, that one of the most important things in life is integrity. I think that is what I think it represents. That's the value. And I think it's very important. So for people coming, journalists, to emulate that, and then you can go to high places.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A multi-perspective personality, a man of many parts.
Okay.
And my interaction with him started sometimes around 1987, 88. He was the PR in charge of Airways, and we approached him. We were to go to Maiduguri at that point in time, and he assisted us tremendously. And you can imagine the kind of person he is. Once you are in his, once he's around you, the sense of humor, the way he relates with people is fantastic, and he gives. But when you talk in terms of knowledge, I've read his book. I read it 2 times, and I know he was a crack reporter, crack investigative reporter, and that ran him into problem, with Bako. You know, Bako was a commissioner in Kano State, but military head of that state, and he said, "Who sent you here to come and be disturbing my peace here?" And one way or the other, because he did some stories, you know, and he wasn't happy with it. And you know, military, it's just once and one he was moved out of the town or country. But beyond that, he investigated so many aspects of Kano life, you know, important personalities and all that. But what I enjoy most about him is his human relations. Fantastic human being. I mean, he very humble. Just meet him. In fact, unlike other OBAs that would say, okay, this is, no, he will not behave like that. He will get something out of you. He will assist, you know, if he can. And on many occasions, he assisted us, especially at the NUJ level. He was a beauty, you know, to stay with. And we will miss him. He will be sorely missed. He will be sorely missed.
The KBC meant many things to people like us. I remember in 1977, when he just joined Nigerian Airways, and I left raw publicity to join Nigerian Limited. We were on a course together in Kano, working Solomon and Agishi's program, Oral Teachers of Management in 1977. And ever since, we have done many things together. I've been to this place with him, and this should be about 1988 or when I was Secretary General of the Nigerian Stock Corporations. But we shared many things in common. The first thing we shared in common was passion for education, passion for excellence. He had a diploma from the University of Lagos in mass communication. And at many times we were talking about how to advance these frontiers of knowledge. The KBC later decided, despite becoming a king, to pursue a degree in law, which I also did. After leaving Cleveland University with a second-class upper degree and attending the law school, he thought that was not enough, so he went to Bangkok University, got his master's there, and when he was doing his PhD, I was also at Bangkok. We were together, and we audited many courses together. At international levels, we attended many programs, the International Corporations Conference together. And I remember in 1982, when I was going for my master's degree in UK, it was fashionable those days to get some pictures from Nigeria Airways. And the late monarch was there for me. He was always giving me free tickets to UK and to US.
So much. He trained me as a journalist. Even before I got admission into our institution, he told me, Dele, this profession you are going, you must not think of the monetary aspect. So he had prepared me for this job, and today I thank God that what he taught me and subsequently school, I have taken to the tenets of the profession. Now, my dad had been a thoroughbred person right from when he was young. He was incidentally the only child of his parents. So he's never bothered about what he gets from you, but he's bothered about what he can do for you, and that's seen for you. He trained us. He told us that life is not about you must pursue money at all costs, but you must be prepared to face the challenges, and he faced it. He faced the challenges right from his days in Daily Times through Nigeria Airways, And now as an OBA, I know practically that he had faced quite a number of challenges, and he stood by his belief that he will succeed. Of course, which made him to go into to academics too. What I missed most in him was the day he was supposed to be hooded as a PhD person, at Babcock. I represented him, and I wept. I cried because out of 160 doctorate graduates, 159 got theirs, and the VC introduced me that Kabesi is the only one that could not. So I'm missing him already. Honestly, he's been a wonderful father, and not just to us, to those who came in contact with him. In fact, he had done so much for outsiders than we. So we say, don't bother, that's his own thing.
So here standing before you is just one of those people that worked with Baba. I can tell you that late Oba Ogunleye is a jack of so many professions and master of all. Call it journalism, public relations, the law, and even when you come to community service, he mastered every art like that. And also I can tell you that whereas he can work, he worked when there is the need to work, and he enjoyed himself when there is the need to enjoy himself. At the office in Lagos, we had our drinks. While we are working, we drink. I'm not talking of drinking Coca-Cola, you know now. Third was the fact that when he eventually became the Oba here, I was coming here always, and one thing that he would never do was to take things from you. One thing was to really Oba, some, you know what I mean. But each time I came around, he would give me a bottle of brandy. And the last time I came around, I came down with Jumeji, and he took us into and said, "Come and see." He took us to the study, and he showed me the thesis. We discussed about it extensively, and I said, "Okay, I'll come back to look at it, and then we'll look at what we can do with it." And that was the last time I saw it. But I'm going to say, I'm very sincerely that Oba Ogunleye was a good man.
Promoter of peace. From all I've heard today, he may ensure that every community around him lived in peace. The professional bodies lived in peace. And he was a proponent of the public relations ethics. And that is wonderful. Everybody had something good to say, and I think
Kabiyesi was really committed to the growth of the OGUNLEYE. We also recall vividly the active role he played during the maiden edition of the Nigerian Public Relations Week, which was hosted by Ogun Chapter in April 2024. At the event drew top-notch dignitaries and industry players across the country. Kabiyesi was at the forefront of mobilization for the event. In fact, he was part of the chapter's delegation that made advocacy visit to the Oba Babatunde Ajayi, the Akaribo of Remo Land, and SY chairman of the State Council of others. Oba Ogunleye gave thought-provoking remarks at the engagement in traditional rulers, all of the program of the NPRW that featured monarchs from all over the state. However, and sadly, the open plenary of the NPRW was the last formal event of the NPRW that the royal father attended. Kabiyesi, your contributions will forever be etched in our memories. As a traditional ruler, Oba Ogunleye was the unifying force that brought people together across different divides. He was a true father figure whose door was always open. He led with a gentle and yet with a firm resolve. His wisdom and guidance as a monarch helped to shape the destiny of his people and project his community positively. Kabiyesi was a shining example of leadership. He was a strong advocate for education, healthcare, and economic development. He worked tirelessly to promote the welfare of his people, and his effort led to tremendous improvement.
And a few other former chairmen of OGUNLEYE all converge here to resolve the intractable crisis that plagued the Nigerian Union of Journalism, OGUNLEYE Council, for about 5 years. And I can recall in one of those occasions, and each time we were here, we came here, Kabiyesi was always magnanimous, very humble. In fact, I can't place him how humble Kabiyesi is, before some of us that are his children. He will provide for us food, added yam, whatever, and then fresh palm wine here in Akiade. And I want to tell you that at one of those meetings, sometimes at manager's office, manager's office at Para we will hold meetings late into the night, and Kabiyesi will always come. At one of the occasions, Mr. Idiano intervened and told all the protagonists in the OGUNLEYE UJ crisis and said, Afi Ori Ade, Kabiyesi OGUNLEYE Afi sheath your sword. And that was it. And when we had all this, when the issue was finally resolved, the national body of NUJ, the president, Zizugo, set up a committee called Revalidation and Screening Committee to ensure that we have practicing journalists in OGUNLEYE. Kabiyesi was a member of that committee, chaired by revered Barrister Adebola Badejo. I served as the secretary of that committee. Every time we had sittings at the Weroy to screen journalists, Kabiyesi was always present. I do not know how he managed. And at that time he was in school. His PhD was on, and all of those, and he still managed, to create time, for the settlement of that crisis. All we can say is that Kabiyesi left a house that is undivided. He left a house that is reunited. He left a house that is formidable today.
The life and times of Oba Ogunleye have justified the saying of Alexander Smith, a Scottish poet, that a man doesn't plant a tree for himself, he plants it for posterity. Indeed, the highly resourceful Kabiyesi has planted a tree for all as a buffer.